अथ पंच पद्यानि।
Panch Padyani, 5 rows of listener. In Jalbhed, the different qualities of speakers have been described, and in this scripture, classification of listeners has been done. In the process of path of Pushti Marg, due to primacy of mellows of conjugative, Sringar Ras, both union, Sanyog and separation, Viyog, service of Lord and remembrance of pastimes are given equal importance. If sometimes due to the providence of schedule of services to Lord would not be fulfilled, the remembrance speech has the same importance, and in executing service should not remain only physically, then by doing them emotionally also, it is necessary to enjoy the mellows of pastime. The perfect system of services is associated with the pastime, but what should be the level of hearing to get connected with the pastimes of Lord, understanding glories or importance of Supreme Lord? Therefore, Sri Mahaprabhuji has broadly described level of speakers, having depicted the quality of speaker in great detail in Jalbhed. Now here the listeners are categorized in 4 types: Uttam or advanced, Madhyam or intermediate, Kanishta or inferior, or Adham or sinful. The listeners who have divine remembrance while executing their services are called advanced. One who are only engaged in listening are called intermediate, and the listeners who hear occasionally and not always connected in pastimes are inferior ones, and the ones who execute services remembrance of Lord only for selfish motives are called sinful. Sometimes such classification like pure grace, Shuddha Pushti, grace, Pushti Pushti, or regulated grace, Maryada Pushti, or flow grace, Prabhavi Pushti, that is one graced yet having wandering personality traits, are made accordingly into different classes of listeners. Therefore, quality like impatience, inquisitiveness, and the interest about the subject of listening, along with the disinterest in other worldly means and their rewards. The listener having all the 3 qualities is qualified as advanced. The one with 2 qualities is called intermediate, and the one with just single quality is called inferior, lower, and they always fulfill their selfish motives. Amongst the listeners, Parikshitji and Vidurji, Parikshitji is called intermediate, whereas Vidurji is called advanced. This is because Sukhdevji himself has travelled to the banks of Gangaji to discourse Srimad Bhagavad to Parikshitji, because he did not go to Sukhdevji with the desire to hear Srimad Bhagavad, as his purpose was for salvation and not with the intention of devotion. While Vidurji himself went to Maitreyaji on the banks of river Gangaji with influence of his devotion to hear about the glories of the Supreme Lord. This scripture has 5 verses. First verse speaks of advanced listeners of the path of devotion. Second verse talks about intermediate listeners of path of devotion, and third, fourth verses give detail of the form of lower or inferior class of listeners of path of devotion. In the 5th version explains the origin form of advanced listeners who are qualified for path of surrender.
श्री कृष्ण रस विक्षिप्त मानसारति वर्जिताः अनिर्वृतालोक वेद ते मुख्याः श्रवणोत्सुकाः.
Verse 1. The listener who are completely engrossed in the devotion to Lord Krishna, and due to that they are devoid of all other interest in the matter of the world. Also they are devoid of worldly and Vedic happiness and rewards, etc. Those always eager to listen, original listeners in the path of devotions are called Uttam Adhikari, that is listeners of advanced category. The serving form of Lord Krishna, of own path and of self-realization, being the form of mellow of spiritual love, Sringar Ras, the living entities engrossed in his devotion remain occupied in the filling of Ras pastimes, Ras Leela of Lord. Owing to such an excellent state, they are devoid of any attachment in anything materialistic. Being drenched in the main mellow of self-bliss, this living entity realizes all the worldly insignificant pleasures or Vedic reward like salvation, etc., to be meaningless only. They always remain anxious of glorification of pastime of Supreme Lord after executing devotional service, when in union owing to their engrossment in love for Supreme Lord. In this way, they are advanced in both hypothesis, means pramay, as well as evidence or testimony or praman. So, pramay and praman. They do not connect with cultivation of path of regulations in hearing of glorification of pastimes of Supreme Lord, but owing to love of Supreme Lord, they are eager to hear about the pastimes of Supreme Lord. Lord Krishna himself said to Uddhavji that I nourish those living entities who surrender unto me living desires of worldly or Vedic rewards. These are qualities of original listeners and these are grace in grace, pushti pushti, living entities, advanced listener.
विक्लिन्नमनसो ये तु भगवत् स्मृतिविह्वलाः अर्थैकनिष्ठास्ते चापि मध्यमाः श्रवणोत्सुकाः.
Verse 2. These listeners are of soft mind. When they remember Lord Krishna, their mind becomes restless, but they are only attached to the results associated with listening to the spiritual discourse. Therefore, they are said to be intermediate listeners. They are characteristics of regulated grace, pushti maryada, living entities. Mind becomes spiritually restless of such listeners in devotion, in remembrance of Lord Krishna. They get overpowered with emotions on hearing the glorification of Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, but their special attention is only for the result associated with hearing the discourse and not for obtaining devotion. When Lord comes in their mind, then only they become restless. They are not always drenched in mellows of Supreme Lord, but owing to their desire of knowledge, clear existence of special love for Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, they are considered qualified for middle class listeners of Pushti Marg. Vidurji traveled to pilgrimage not for the benefit of any result or virtues of the place of pilgrimages, but to associate with devotees of Supreme Lord and hearing about glories of Supreme Lord. And Vidurji himself went to banks of river Ganga to hear spiritual discourse on pastimes of Supreme Lord from Maitreyaji. Therefore, he is advanced or the best listener. Parikshitji wanted to obtain salvation and Sukhdevji reached there searching him only. Therefore, he is intermediate class of listener. Therefore, in this verse, hearing to obtain the reward of hearing is called of intermediate class.
निःसन्दिग्धं कृष्णतत्त्वं सर्वभावेन ये विदुः ते त्वावेशात्तु विकला निरोधाद्वा न चान्यथा.
Verse 3. The listeners who know Lord Shri Krishna without any doubt as super soul and super absolute truth, knowing the importance of this element at the time of listening, overpowered by elements sometimes become spiritually restless and during that time attains ecstasy, nirod, but not otherwise. The listeners who are by hearing the complete importance destroy all their doubts about the form of Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, and during the time of hearing the pastimes of Supreme Lord, they become ecstatic owing to that nirod. Despite that, due to the attachment to the other place other than Supreme Lord Shri Krishna as well, that base situation is not permanent. It is only for the duration of hearing. Knowing that Shri Krishna is the soul of everything, therefore whatever is happening is done by Lord only. Everything happens according to the sweet will of the Supreme Lord. He is in everybody, Sarvatma Bhava. Despite knowing the capability of such Supreme Lord, attachments keep on happening somewhere else. This is a symptom of inferior class on the path of devotion because perfect love of Supreme Lord is not yet achieved.
पूर्णभावेन पूर्णार्थाः कदाचिन्न तु सर्वदा अन्यासक्तास्तु ये केचित् अधमाः परिकीर्तिताः.
Verse 4. These listeners hear with full emotions for obtaining full results for wealth, etc. But that charging of emotion is only for short duration. This we sometimes get attached to the other matters as well. They are called lowest listeners. Such listeners are complete in emotions but keep desires of salvation while hearing pastimes of Supreme Lord. Therefore, their emotion surcharge can stay only during hearing the pastimes of Lord and not thereafter. They are attached to material things outside of time window of hearing pastimes of Supreme Lord, and their listening portion of devotion is executed along with the material desire. So they are sometimes impassionate to the result of Varnashram and the path of regulation. These listeners are called lowest class, have obtained ecstasy at least, that is Nirodh, at least for some small duration. But these listeners maintain additional addiction in the worldly material and have desires to obtain rewards from them. They get knowledge and devotion for some time. Therefore, their emotions are not permanent and hence they are called lowest class of listeners.
अनन्यमनसो मर्त्या उत्तमाः श्रवणादिषु देशकालद्रव्यकर्तृ मन्त्रकर्म प्रकारतः.
Verse 5. Those listeners who with unique mind in their whole life keep hearing, etc., according to the six components of religion: place, time, means, doer, mantra, and action. In this way, they are known as the best listeners. Here describes the form of advance or the best class in the origin path of surrender by execution with exclusive focus of mind till the death, the whole life, hearing, remembrance, contemplation, and then with devotees, glorification of that hearing. They have reached to this unique class of listeners so that they also experience the six components on religion as soul of everyone. Be it a holy or unholy country, they experience the feelings of Supreme Lord everywhere, except time, Kal, understanding it as a form of Supreme Lord. Similarly, experience means doer, mantra, and action, everything as a part of Supreme Lord. They don't see any fault in the doer, etc. Despite reach to such a class, they are still called advanced class of surrender on path of regulation, because they do hearing, etc., to obtain knowledge of greatness and not for realization of pastime. Therefore, these listeners are called advanced class of paths of surrender. Thus ends Panch Padyani prepared by Sri Vallabha Ji.